I'm Sam.
And I'm Jacob. Welcome to Table Talk.
We're friends who left our jobs at the church, learning what it means to be faithful to Jesus when certainty isn't the goal. This conversation is an extension of our years of questioning and wrestling, and we're talking about theology, books, culture, scripture, spiritual formation, and whatever else lands on the table. Here's to faithful curiosity and patchwork spirituality. Let's talk.
Oh, happy World Cup Day. Is that how you say that?
Is there a day? Is that
dude,
your day?
Your team won, bro.
Oh, Mexico?
Come on, dude. You're not even watching?
But I was wondering, is World Cup Day a thing?
I'm sure it's not. But today is the start of the World Cup.
Okay. Dude, I'm going to I'm going to a World Cup game on Monday.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Not in Houston.
No, in Atlanta.
Oh, dude, I was going to say, if you're in H-Town, you have to tell me. That's awesome. In Atlanta. Who's playing?
It's Spain versus, oh shoot, hold up. Spain versus Cabo Verde. I think that's it.
I'll nod and act like I know who those teams are.
Spain? Like the country, you know?
Never heard of it. Yeah, I'm trying to see the map from 4th grade. No, from your time living in Mexico as a missionary kid, how much does that still live in your blood? Like, how much do you still, eat and breathe soccer? Or do you?
Not as much as my brother, my dad. Like, they're big soccer fans. They've always been big soccer fans before we even moved down to Mexico. I enjoy playing the sport. I don't quite follow it like professionally. And then the World Cup is like obviously the World Cup. I kind of just follow that. We used to do this thing at the children's home where every year all of the kids would get to pick. We'd do this whole like kind of raffle like selection system where the kids would get to pick a country. Kind of, they get raffled it and they get to pick, but you get kind of picked or assigned a country, and then you just kind of like you get prizes if your country wins. So obviously everybody's rooting for Mexico, and everybody wanted to be Mexico, and you get to make you got like white shirts, and you get to like paint it the like colors of
putting the flag.
Yeah, you put the flag on your shirt, and then we had like prizes and stuff if you made it to certain stages in the tournament. So it was really cool. I think I got Ghana one year, and I don't know how far I made it.
It's kind of like gambling for kids. Like you're like, dude, I'm going for that prize. Give me that jackpot.
You got Argentina, Brazil, Portugal, Spain. You were pretty much like guaranteed top 5.
That's awesome.
And then my dad got Holland. And I remember Holland, I think it was Holland or Germany, one of them, he got one of them, and then they beat Mexico out of the World Cup. And so he wore his jersey on market day when everybody floods the street and like fills the whole street with markets, and you get to go shop and stuff, and it's like an open air market. He wore his jersey out there, and there were people who were cussing at him, like flipping him off, and just like, they were so mad at him, and he was just like, my team won. But everybody was his team. It was a signed team for the World Cup.
I'm not sure that's a winning strategy for a missionary.
No.
In Mexico. That's awesome.
I don't think those people felt the love of Jesus when he wore that shirt.
But it does say something about your dad's courage and the I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Holland.
The World Cup.
Yeah. We'll have to see how your team does. If I had to pull a team out of a hat right now and give it to you for your childhood bracket, like emotionally, what would you be hoping for?
I've always loved Argentina.
Okay. Gonna claim Argentina.
You're claiming?
No, I said you're gonna claim. I should
Oh,
claim it.
oh,
I have a friend living there, and I love mate. Have you ever even had mate?
I have.
Okay,
Okay, I
you
had
can
to.
have it.
I this is out on like. I just had to look up if they even qualifies. They are, so you're good. We're good to go.
Maybe I'll take Chile if they qualified, and then we can be arch rivals.
You got to take Brazil. I don't even know if Brazil qualified.
Chile
See,
did not qualify, so
Group C. They're in their group stage with Morocco and Haiti and Scotland.
I'm gonna watch the Argentina game and make a cup of mate, drink it in my traditional, you know, Chilean Argentinian mate cup with the filtered metal straw. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, dude. I'll FaceTime you. We'll check in.
already.
Dude, we're
Yeah,
back for. Oh, what were you gonna say? What were you saying?
just realized we're matching.
Oh yeah. You know, I like that color.
I like that color. So
And yeah, so we did color coordinate for episode 2 here. We hit record, as we said in our pilot. Welcome to Table Talk, and this is kind of the Wild West. This is kind of like you made it past the pilot, and now you're into yeah, the finger guns are out, and this is uncharted territory. No one actually knows what's going to happen this episode, and that's how we wanted it. Yeah.
yes, sir.
Oh wow. Now I feel like I need to say something important. One fun thing coming from the pilot was, I don't know about you, but I got feedback from our 2 listeners.
Let's go.
At least
I got feedback from one.
yes. So that means we had 3. I feel loved because, of course, when you start a project like a podcast, you know, you're going to have family who is supporting and good friends. And so many people were kind of cheering us on. Are you cool talking about some of the feedback? I thought it might be fun to just, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, let's do
one
it.
person just one of the 2 just cussed us out. So yeah,
Wait, for real?
I'm sure. No, well, no, not really. One of the 2 was a family member who said it was. I love this actually. They said the Krishnamurti quote, which was one of the most spontaneous parts of that episode for me, because I had just seen it in my algorithm. But that quote that said, once you teach the child the name of the bird, the child will never see that bird again. They were wrestling with that because they said, well, but is naming actually the problem, or is labeling? And so they brought up Genesis 2, which anytime someone brings up Genesis 1 or 2, I'm on the edge of my seat already, you know? But so in Genesis 2, you have the creator, you know, walking around the desert, and there's water, there's a spring, and God is throwing pottery and making a human in Genesis 2, which, by the way, I have to pause here and say, I just last week threw pottery for the first time on a double date. Bro, it is so hard. It is so hard. And so
Wait,
I have.
what about it is hard? Like, give me some context. What's
It just looks easy because it looks like it's spinning on the wheel. You know, it's spinning, and it looks like you just kind of put your hands on it, and it starts to take shape. And I never thought about this before. If that is not centered on the wheel, like right in the center, if you move it off center at all, then when it turns, it can just get a life of its own, and you're kind of like wrestling it. You know, you have to keep it in the center.
that's humanity right there. We moved from that's the whole story. That's sin in a nutshell. We moved from the center of God's throwing wheel, and now we're just
a propeller, basically. Yeah, we're just flapping around. We were supposed to be a little vessel. So anyway, that's where God's at, right? Creating the human, and God is creating a human who is alone with God, and God says it's not good for the human to be alone. So you know the story. So then God, what's fun is in context, God actually fires up the wheel again and is throwing more pottery and is making animals. And the animals are being paraded in front of the human, and God's like making them in real time. And it says to see what the human will name them in search of a partner, right, for the human. And that story is all about God and this human in partnership looking for an essential other or this equal partner for the human, and it involves naming. So God's asking, "Hey, what do you want to call this?" And God's on the edge of God's seat to see what Adam, this human partner, is gonna call these things. But that story doesn't sound like the end of curiosity, does it? It's like this quest. It's this partnership. There's a dynamic even with the Genesis motif of ruling and reigning, that naming is the beginning of that vocation, where um, it's part of how you are going to like get to know these creations, these creatures, and take care of them. So I just thought that was great feedback, pushback, because naming can be generative when it is part of a quest, part of kind of that Proverbs 25, seeking and searching out. It can be the beginning of seeing. And I think the
Mm,
Krishnamurti quote wasn't contradicting that, but
yeah.
casting naming as like more of a labeling, more of like a there's a way to name things that is the beginning of seeing them, or the beginning of learning about them, and there's a way of naming that says I already know what that is. What are your thoughts on that? We hadn't talked about that yet.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I think I think my mind immediately went to as well, like as you're talking about Genesis and you're talking about God throwing pottery and showing these creatures to the human to see what the human would like react and name them.
Yeah,
Um, I was thinking about the quote, and in the quote, it's it's you who are naming something for the child, right?
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
That's like so
yes.
to kind of like pair that with the Genesis, like to to synthesize the quote to Genesis, it would have been like if God was naming things for the human to see them. Like if he's making it, showing to the human, being like, that's a giraffe, that's an elephant. None of these are your equal partner. Like,
Uh,
but he's not. He's putting it in front of the human. So like the equivalent of the Genesis for the uh the Krishna Murti? Is that
yeah, yes.
the quote would have been like for the child will start to see the bird when you ask it what it is. Like,
Oh, dude,
but
yes.
like I don't know, I could just see how that like the feedback just opened up like layers to that with Genesis, where yeah, there is a way of naming things that is helpful. I think there's a
Yes.
way of naming things that opens up the conversation, and then there's a way of naming things that like shuts down the conversation, which I think was that's kind of what you were saying about
Uh-huh.
uh, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of sounded like that's where you're going with that.
Yeah. No, that layer that you saw just makes it come alive for me. That is it, I think. And as a dad, I love that experience with Shiloh,
Mhm.
with my son, getting to see the world through his eyes. And
Mhm.
yes, that dynamic that you described of suspending my judgments, suspending my categories, my labels. And when he gets to, in his curiosity, in his, um, you know, beginner's mind, when he gets to start the conversation and share what he's seeing, that
Mhm.
he is seeing it, and I'm seeing it that way. And it's fun to think of God in that position with us. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think that also, we might want to step over this rabbit hole, but that has that a whole cascading set of implications for God's sovereignty and how we think about, how we resolve some of those things. Maybe it's not so cut and dry, right? If God is on the edge of his seat with us, partnered with us, wanting to see through our eyes, what would that mean for how God is God?
Yeah. Yeah. I you brought up, like, having kids, and, like, that kinda made me think of that, like, I see it so much now that a lot of my family members are having kids, or have recently just had one, and the joy and the life that it gives the parents, and I watch this, like, happen on a daily basis. Every Sunday, when I have Sunday lunch, I see this happen. But when there's something new, something unfamiliar to the child, the joy that it
Hmm.
brings a parent to say, "What is that?" Like, knowing
Yeah.
full well what it is, to ask
Yeah.
the kid what it is, and to, like, ask more questions and get the kid interested in whatever it is that the parent has some idea of, but they
Hmm.
do right. There's some sort of, like, translating joy of watching someone begin to understand something for the first time, and it's not telling them what it is, it's asking them what it is, and then asking them how they're understanding it, how they're seeing it.
Oh yeah.
So I I see that so much now, and it's like, it brings me joy, and I'm not even their parent, I'm just their Uncle Sam. So
Yeah, dude. Whoa, you're their Uncle Sam? That is your Halloween costume, dude. You've gotta get the red, white, and blue going. Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir. Role reversal. You're drafting me. Um, bro, my wife, as you know, has a rare metabolic disorder called PKU. And so, speaking of experiencing things for the first time, she's never bitten into protein. She can't eat protein. So she's never bitten into a steak, or, um, and so there are treatments coming out and we're not on one. She's not on one currently. And we've had, there's been seasons. PKU is not easy to manage. It's particularly hard when you're trying to grow your family, and for women to get pregnant who have PKU is very challenging. So we have Shiloh is a miracle. We have a story there. But when she was pregnant, she had this momentary increase in her ability to eat protein because Shiloh was actually partnered with her, helping her digest protein.
whoa.
And so she tried salmon during that time for the first time. And I can't wait until she's on a treatment long term, and I get to have that almost parent child relationship with her of like just sitting wide eyed across from the table on a date and watching her like taste her first good steak. But when she ate salmon, she said the funniest thing, and this will click with you, but it's just what we're talking about. It's how you don't see things when they become familiar, when you stop thinking, when you stop, being curious. She
Mm.
said, "Oh, it's like sticky. Like when I bite down, my teeth
Mhm.
like stick together." She's like, "I didn't expect that." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I took a bite. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it is." It's like it does. It makes like a little like spring sound when you bite down into it. Anyway, so
Yeah.
all the fun bits of learning and curiosity that we get
Mm.
to enjoy from family, little ones. Um, do you feel like I can talk about the second piece of feedback? Do you feel like
Mhm.
you want to riff on that more? Do you have any other experiences of in your faith or otherwise of the beginner's mind?
Mm. Well, not to go down another rabbit hole, but I feel like that I feel like just that understanding too of, like, walking with somebody walking with somebody by means of questions instead of answers is not common in faith.
Yeah.
Which is so, like, the dichotomy of it is so interesting that, like, that's kind of at least in my experience, um, it's been answers are the kind and loving way to explain the the bird of faith, right? And I mean,
Mm,
we kind of hit on this in the initial pilot episode, but
sure.
um, so I guess not to beat a dead horse or whatever the saying is, but just that, like, I'm so interested in how that dichotomy shifted from the way that God, like, introduced the human to new things, but wanted to see their reaction to it, and how that whole process then became a faith that was rooted in telling people what things are about God.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
not letting people well, not letting people ask questions, but
Mm.
maybe even like guiding the questions or uh,
Mhm.
providing the answer before the question is asked about God. And I think that brings up the whole sovereignty conversation too, where it's like, I don't think I ever asked questions about God's sovereignty until I had questions about it that I didn't feel like I could ask anymore because somebody showed me the hummingbird and was like, that's how God's sovereignty works. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I feel like a basketball kind of swirling the rim of the rabbit hole right now. And
Okay.
like it kind of makes sense. I kind of want to go into it, but I'm not sure. I know there was another feedback, and I wanted to leave room for you to
Mm.
share yours too. Maybe we take God's sovereignty on another day. It'll
Another
come up
time.
again.
It
But
will.
yeah, and honestly, as I said, I'm always down to talk about Genesis 1, 2, any scripture. But yeah, in so many ways, for me, the tree of knowing good and bad is the symbol of, you know, that reversal. Instead of our relationship with God being characterized by wonder, permission to explore, right? Permission to fail because we are loved and we're connected. That's the tree of life. That's the original setup. I see the tree of knowing good and bad as this knowledge that creates dualism, good, bad, right, wrong, black, white, hummingbird, robin. That I think is the Bible's way of giving us those kind of that origin story of like how this went wrong is like there's a human failure when we reach for certainty or when we reach for that fruit, it breaks the connection that we had with God and kind of inverts it. Does that make sense to you? Is that what you were kind of thinking of?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're teetering around the rabbit hole. So I'll say yes to that. And then I think I'll save some thoughts for the rabbit hole later on. You had one more feedback. I had kind of a quasi feedback. Um, we can talk about this. I think we can just revisit the conversation because I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's pretty it's a pretty big rabbit hole. I don't think we'll lose it that easily.
Instead of the elephant in the room, it's the rabbit hole in the room. It's just a crater. It's just a crater there. Um, yeah, the other feedback I got was good. Was also fun. It was about the quilting metaphor,
Mm.
and yeah, another loved one of mine. So many friends were just very positive, and some family gave more detailed feedback. So love you, fam. Um, thanks for listening. Um, I'll shout out my grandma for this one. She, my sweet grandma, who's kind of the matriarch of the family, and it is just lived a long life of you know, faith, faithful love. She said, and again, this is a small, I think, shot at us for talking about quilting naively, because she was kind of like, well, once again, like my sister,
You like
yeah,
a professional
quilting,
quilter?
yeah, oh yeah, dude. I mean, I won't speak for her quilting skills. We'll have to bring her on as a guest. Just kidding.
Let's go.
But she said, yeah. So you have patches on a quilt. You have you have these maybe theological panoramas as You have these pieces, but the actual substance is what's in the quilt. What actually keeps you warm is love. She just kind of pulled all that
Mm.
together from which was a new layer for that metaphor. And I thought it was sweet. I thought it was beautiful. Um, I like to think of the patches as serving love, like that. You know, if you if I don't know what to call it, stuffing. Like if you just, I should have asked her. I should have asked. Sorry, Graham. If you just had love, so to speak, in this kind of like loose, material, it wouldn't have form. It wouldn't actually keep you warm, right? So it's like the quilt provides this structure and like these theological pieces that we have fit together in such a way that we're covered in love, right? Like they kind of tell
Mm.
the story and order that love in a way that is human, in a way that is tractable. Anyway, so I thought that was. Well, do you want to riff on that?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Embarrass us further with our lack of quilting knowledge.
I would genuinely love to have grandma on and just have her explain quilting. And then we just like sit there and let it marinate
Mm.
the analogy.
We can repent in dust and ashes.
Exactly. The best way to repent. Um, that the stuffing, that's a whole nother dimension that I didn't even think about. But that makes so much sense. Because I mean, I can think of experiences where I have like a skinny little thin blanket on me and it does nothing versus having like a stuffed quilt and it's
Mm.
just like trapping in the heat and making it warm and cozy. And like, I guess where I get lost in that analogy now is the goal to contain love within our theology, or is it to just hold it as loosely as possible inside? Right. So
Mm.
I don't know if that question makes sense, but like, I think where the analogy may start to break for me, I don't know if it's just quilting or I haven't thought about it enough in that sense, but love obviously has to have some sort of parameters to define what it is. If anything that exists has to have some sort of parameter to define what it is.
Yeah.
So must love.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you think about it, if you think about a quilt, right? You could think about it as one gigantic blanket where the edges are sorry, for the YouTubers, I'm pointing and I'm
Ah.
drawing a big rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
Where the edges are all like knitted in and it's just one big patch. But I don't know if I've
Sure.
ever seen a quilt like that. I feel like that's just a blanket and then it would just have stuffing and it's moving all around and it's like, it could fall all the way to the bottom and then the top has no stuffing. Does this make sense?
It sounds like a pillow.
A pillow. Yeah. But like a really bad pillow.
Yeah.
Um,
Very like a planar pillow, large 2-dimensional pillow. Not a good pillow.
right. So then you have these like squares that each contain some of the fluff, some of the stuffing, or
Mm-hmm.
different shapes that are containing some of the fluff and some of the stuffing. And
Okay.
so by virtue of having these structures and shapes and patches all over the quilt,
Mm-hmm.
the fluff, the love is contained, but it's also distributed across the
Right.
whole of the
Mm-hmm.
quilt. So I don't know if this is
Mm-hmm.
if this all makes sense. But
I think so.
my question would be then, man, what in what way is love best defined and distributed amongst the quilt? In what way is love best defined and distributed amongst my understanding with theological patches? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this one patch over here is too big and the stuffing's getting a little jumbled all in one spot. Maybe it needs a bit more defining, or maybe this one spot's way too defined. It doesn't have any stuffing in it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no love there now. This one
Mm.
theological patch is holding down all of this space, and it doesn't have any room for stuffing. It's all knitted tightly. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it, the analogy going
Yeah.
much more broad from that
Mm-hmm.
from that feedback, and so that I'll have to think about that, marinate in
Yeah.
a little bit.
And I love that we get to think about it, that we get to talk about it.
Mm,
I think quilting originally was for us about theological workshopping. We're willing to have something that is a little bit messy, but authentic, something that's ours, and to add the dimension of love as the substance of that. I think it does make the analogy better. It goes from just this intellectual pursuit of the goal is to keep thinking, to keep noticing, to keep quilting, to the tension that we described, where the big thing is love. For me, I hope that you know Meg, my wife, and I actually talk about this and had a conversation not long ago about this. Why be Christian at all? You know, if love is the big thing, because we don't need Jesus to be loving. In a sense, like we don't need a religion to be loving. So I think the way that I come at that is to say, well, there is this quilting that I'm invited into, and I've been introduced. I was handed a quilt. I was introduced to this Christian textile, so to speak, this template of it's religion, it's spirituality, and it's Christian. I was introduced to Jesus as a teacher who transformed me, like in the process of just like living with this quilt, in the process of exploring. It's not exploring theology. It's asking questions all the way from what is okay, I have a Bible. Where do I start? To how do I love my neighbor? To and to like along that arc of my life, um, following Jesus and quilting and staying curious has been a story about love. And so, whatever the kind of intellectual and theological bent that I might have along the way, for me, needs to map love, like you said, across my life. And I think good theology does that. Like, I think if we were to talk about God's sovereignty, or if we were to talk about, um, you know, uh, any big kind of picture part of the Christian faith, it needs to come back to how does love get into that corner of not just of my mind, but then of my life in that way of, you know, waking up tomorrow and showing up in love. So I'm trying to agree with you and Graham and just say, to the degree that the patches and the quilt give love structure, give us something to kind of like attach our lives to and live into. I think it is valuable, and I think that's why I am Christian, right? Because Jesus gives you a path, and it's I think you can try to love um, using other paths. But the one thing I would not want to have is no path.
Yeah.
I would not want to just kind of be unmoored and just um, having nothing but my own reference points for love, because there's thousands of years of faithful humans who have gone before us, who have
Mhm.
lifetimes of experimenting, of quilting, and so I feel like in this tradition we've got the best shot at
Yeah.
becoming people of love. Yeah, I don't know. I I'm sure that only made some sense because I need to think about it more too. But
No, I love that, man. I yeah. I was gonna ask, as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking about how, like, along the lines of like why Jesus.
hmm,
And I remember, I don't know if it was you. You hopefully you take this as a compliment. I don't know if this is you or Tim Mackey that I heard say this. Um, it's probably you.
my heart,
Uh,
I do take that as a
uh,
compliment.
but it was
It's
something
probably Tim
along.
Mackey.
I think it was probably both of you. Honestly, I think I probably heard it from Tim Mackey, and then you probably taught on it at some point.
That
Um,
means that it was definitely from Tim Mackey. He said it first.
um, but it was something along the lines of like Jesus shows us um, what reality really is.
Mm,
Like he opens our eyes to what is really real, and
mhm,
at the core of reality, if if not to get like super meta, but like if God created all things, sustains all things, however you want to understand God as a being,
yeah.
as I am, uh, he's at the core of everything.
Mm,
And if God has defined himself as love, then love is at the core of all reality. And so to center your life around Jesus is to center your life around love. Um, that's how I've
yeah.
understood like why Jesus. Um,
Mhm,
and I think
yeah.
as far as I've studied, which is not much, I feel like Jesus has explained it the easiest.
Yeah.
I haven't studied many other rabbi or anybody else who's talking about love
Mhm,
the way Jesus has, and I think that that's what captivates a lot of people when they first have that encounter, like you were talking about, where your life is utterly changed because love met you,
mm,
um, and
right.
we understand that love as a human being named Jesus. who taught us what it means to love and what it looks like. Um,
Yes.
I think that yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Keep
so
going.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask like how if God is the center of all reality and God has defined himself as love, so love is the center of all reality. And we kind of you and I have personally struggled with like defining God in a lot of senses, in his sovereignty, um,
Yeah.
and in the way that he reveals himself in his word, and how we can should we take that as like that's the way he is. All of the verses that talk about how he doesn't change and things like that. It just kind of gets. I feel like it kind of gets complicated to try and define God,
Yeah.
um, which I think is the point. But I was going to ask if God is reality and if reality is love, how then do we go about understanding love and discerning it versus defining it? Does that make sense?
Discerning it versus defining it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
I
expand
think,
on that.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't expect
Well,
you to
how,
have an answer. It's just a question that's surfaced as I was listening to you talk. And
yeah,
that's my word salad.
dude. Yeah. It's a salad bar tonight. How would you start answering that or responding to that? Not, not a polished answer.
Yeah. So the question, how do we discern love versus define love, right? Um, I think I would start with experience and how have you experienced love?
Mm,
Because I think experience is one thing that every human has, and every human can vouch for their own experience of something. And so the ways that you've experienced love in your life, I feel like are tangible ways to discern where it is and like what it looks like.
sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Uh,
so.
oh, go
You
ahead.
kind of start there. You kind of start with experience. Everyone
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And for some, it's actually a negative experience of not receiving love that is
Mhm.
destructive, which is tragic when,
Yes.
especially for
Yes.
young people in situations that we haven't experienced, abusive situations, things like that. Um,
Yeah.
what maybe going upstream of that question just for a second, why is it important? Like why are you even suggesting that discernment might be a needed alternative to defining love? Does that make sense? Because I think for a lot of Christians, love is defined. It's like, well, love is we're going to speak the truth in love, or like a lot of Christians tend to think like love has a pretty straightforward definition. So what do you
Mhm.
mean? Like, why are we complicating that?
Yeah. Can you re-ask that question of like the
Yeah, yeah.
upstream question?
Yeah. So when you said, are we defining love? Are we discerning love? My question
Mhm.
was, can we go upstream of that fork in the road to ask why, why not just settle it? Why not just say, okay, well, this is what love is. Like, what do you mean discern? Why is discernment part of this? That was kind of where I was going is,
Okay. Yeah.
what warrants us to even slow down enough to ask that question in the first place?
Yes. I think okay. I remember where I was going with this. I think I was going back to the point about God being love. And if God
Hmm.
is love, then if we believe that God is personable, if he
Hmm.
is being of personality and not just some like force that exists with like quantum rules that he has to follow, if he's a person, I I think we fail at this I think we make a mistake at the very beginning if we try and define a person. Like I don't think
Mm,
anybody likes to be defined. You are
right.
this, you are not that. Um, that doesn't mean that there's anyway. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But I think starting upstream and asking the question like, hey, have we in this understanding of love have we defined God in a certain way that
Yeah.
isn't?
Interesting. Mm,
Um, that's why I kind of feel the need to go the discerning versus deciding. I think was the word
right.
I used.
Yes.
Route. because you can discern things about people. As you spend time with them, you can learn like, hey, you know what? I've learned that Jacob likes to drink water from a True Gallon water bottle that could
Oh
crush
yeah.
me if he wasn't super strong. Like I could discern that by watching you and spending time with you and having a relationship with you. Uh, but if I just defined and said, Jacob only likes drinking Diet Dr. Pepper out of his giant water container, I'm like defining a part of who you are and what you're doing by an observation that I'm making, but it's not, I don't know. I think discerning takes relationship. It takes questions. It takes
Yeah.
asking. It takes seeking. It takes trying to understand the person to understand who they are and not who you want them to be. And I think that's
Yep.
like probably the reason to go upstream of that like initial discerning versus deciding what love is like, hey, is this really about love, or is this about God and who we want him to be and who we've kind of gotten comfortable, or who what kind of God makes us comfortable? And once we've decided that, then we can decide what love is from there on out. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think the genius of what you said is it's from First John. God is love.
Mm-hmm.
I if what Scripture is trying to convey is that the mystery of God, like the infinite, the infinitude, the boundlessness of God, and the mystery that could never be put into a box, is how we need to be thinking about love as well. Then, right, that's I think the move that is brilliant that you're making. Like if God will never fit in our boxes, then neither will love. Um, if God is this beautiful mind, as Tim Eckie says, behind all things and in all things, as Paul says, through all things, and in him we live and move and have our being, there's mystery in that. Maybe there's more mystery in love too than we have accounted for, or than we have kind of acted out. Which is funny because one of my favorite Bible scholars actually specifically targets that Ephesians speak the truth in love verse by saying that in the Greek, the verb there is actually not speak the truth. It's not actually speaking is the verb. The verb is the word for truth, spelled as a verb, and it's not a verb in Greek. So it's this wordplay, truthing in love, which is to kind of say truth is not this static thing either. Like truth is this animated thing fueled by love for Paul. Like that's the church has God's love kind of poured into the tank, and then God's truth is lived out as the community, witnesses to the good news of the kingdom in lives of love and service and so on. So I think that's brilliant to kind of compare the inscrutability of God with our feeble attempts to kind of control and manipulate love and decide what it is and define it using our small minds. So thank you for that. I don't know how we got here anymore, but I feel like maybe a better analogy for quilting for us is just two dudes sitting in a room full of like deep craters, and we're just trying not to fall into one of them.
It's just like that movie Holes, just digging. That's you and me.
Yeah. Maybe I need to like put a cowboy hat on next time, have a glass of whiskey.
It could be a vibe.
So did you have some feedback that you got from this thing?
Feedback plus God is love, question mark?
Question mark.
I'm actually going to go try and, I don't know if I'll read it. Because I don't know if I actually have permission to, but it was good feedback. This is a dear friend of mine.
You're just being humble, dude. We all know that he said, or she said, you have the best podcasting voice on the market. Let's be honest. Because that was the main feedback I think that came through.
He did say I missed hearing your voice. I don't think he meant it in the fact that my voice is podcast worthy or not.
I think we all know how he meant it.
Anyway, I also don't have permission to share his name, but he would just it was just super positive, uplifting, proud of us. Um, I actually then just said, hey, like I miss your voice too. Love talking with you. Would love to have you on. So he may make a guest appearance, and we'll see. But it was just love, and he was a great conversation partner for me during a time where I felt like I didn't have too many of those people who we could have safe spaces and conversations with, and he has been and continues to be just an incredible friend and conversation partner and safe space. So
Mm.
if you're listening to this, you know who you are. Love you, bro. We'd love to have you on at some point, but I'll text you about that.
You will have to reveal your identity if you come on the show.
Yeah. You could wear a mask. You could wear like a plastic Batman mask. Just like
Okay. Wait a second. I'm wearing the cowboy hat and whiskey. Our guest is in a mask. What are you wearing?
oh,
An Argentina jersey
I guess. Yeah.
with your mate.
Yeah. It's just some face paint.
That's awesome, man. Well,
Mm.
what do you actually want to wear, dude? You can answer. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I I have no idea. I'm looking around my room like, what could I wear? I don't know.
All right. Well, how
It'll be a
about
surprise.
instead of answering, yeah, you just wear it next time. You just come on.
As long as I'm wearing
I love it.
something.
Dude, what else is kind of percolating for you as we wrap up here? I had one thing to rattle off if there's time, but I feel like I've also been talking too much. I'd love to
Oh,
hear from
I
you.
don't know.
What?
I'd say go for it, bro.
Well, I'd love to hold space for you or our listeners, anyone who wants to interact, our guests who might make appearances, to also just share what are you kind of thinking about, what are you reading. I'm reading this book. I started reading it after our last recording, called "Make Your Home in This Luminous Dark." I mean, chef's kiss for the name. That's James K.A.
That's
Smith, one of my favorite authors. He is just a marvel to read. His writing is just like, it's prose poetry at times. So anyway, um, the book is about the cloud of unknowing, which if you're not familiar is a classic kind of mystical Christian text. I just finished chapter 1 recently, and in chapter 1, I was amazed how much certainty comes up. And so James Smith is a philosopher by training and a professor. Um, and he kind of has his own story of a deconstruction of sorts, and an undoing of certainty and what comes with that for him. And so the book explores art and mysticism and questions. And so chapter 1, he cites this um, little paragraph that is written by a naturalist named Barry Lopez. So I'm going to read the words of Barry Lopez from chapter 1 of this book. And this is an illustration of Barry's account of a day wandering in traditional Walpuri land in northwest Australia. So I'll read the paragraph, and then we can riff on it, and you can too. Love a little bit. My goal that day, he's wandering around northwest Australia. My goal that day was intimacy, the tactile, olfactory, visual, and sonic details of what to most people in my culture would appear to be a wasteland. This simple technique of awareness had long been my way to open a conversation with any unfamiliar landscape. Who are you? I would ask. How do I say your name? May I sit down? Should I go now? Over the years, I'd found this way of approaching whatever was new to me consistently useful. Establish mutual trust, become vulnerable to the place, then hope for some reciprocity and perhaps even intimacy. You might choose to handle an encounter with a stranger you wanted to get to know better in the same way. Each person, I think, finds their own way into an unknown world like this Spinifex plane, we're all by definition naive about the new. But unless you intend to end up alone in your life, it seems to me you must find some way in a new place or with a new person to break free of the notion that you can be certain of what or whom you've actually encountered. You must, at the very least, establish a truce with realities not your own. So, realities not your own, capital R, reality being God, being love. I, to me, this just fits in at the end of this conversation, and also in my own processing of much of this. What do you want to say about that?
If I could be honest, I feel like I need to read it like 4 or 5 times. I feel like,
All right, well,
yeah.
you got time? I'll read it 4 more times.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Um,
That's okay. You don't have to respond if you don't want to.
yeah. I honestly, I don't know. I
For a naturalist, and maybe I didn't give enough context, for a naturalist to be wandering around an unfamiliar place and to be asking questions like, who are you? How do I say your name? My favorite part of this is when he says, I found this way of approaching whatever was new to me consistently useful. Establish mutual trust, become vulnerable to the place, and then hope for some reciprocity and perhaps even intimacy. I think I've done this subconsciously, unwittingly. I think about before I became a dad, I was in the Tetons with my dad and brother and my grandfather, and like it was just this men's trip, and we're in the back country of Wyoming, and carrying everything on our backs. Spent several nights there, and you just have these moments of like, I am so small. What's that old phrase about like nobody goes to the Grand Canyon and says like I'm so big, like I'm, like when you're in these national, and we talked about national parks a little bit last time, and how faith is kind of like this exploration and this like being set loose into territory that is not tame, that is not mine. It's not controlled by me. It's not even like slightly under my thumb, and like you can kind of harden against that. You can brace and resist and like try to control what you can and like get into a survival mindset, or you can like sit on a rock and look up at a vista and say, what is your name? Like, who are you, mountain? And there's a certain vulnerability and a kind of like ego dismantling. And you kind of make yourself fully available to something that is other than you. And that's it. Like that's all you can do. And just in the hopes that you get something back. I don't know that I've done that a ton with places like this, like the guy who wrote that. But I think what James Smith is doing in this first chapter of this book is to say like that stance or that posture characterizes a kind of true knowing or a true wisdom that so much of our certainty industrial complex of education and, I mean, even what we call higher education for pastors, master of divinity. Do we think that we're mastering anything? I think we do, because we create these dogmas and these categories. So anyway, this is not about mastering anything. This is about laying bare, opening yourself up to an other, a genuine other, and just holding out for the good news of something to be given back, something to be revealed and reciprocated. And that way of being in the world is what wisdom is all about, is what true knowing is about. Anyway, maybe that's all it is. Do you want to add anything?
feel like the way that he described that and the way that you just reframed it as a posture, I feel like that just completed my thought. Like, or that just rounded out, smoothed out, clarified for me what I was trying to understand about this whole God love conversation. I feel like the two conversations are merging because it's relationship. It's his relationship. It's all about relationship. It's his relationship with the terrain. It's our relationship with God. But what was his name?
Barry Lopez.
Barry Lopez. He's asking questions, like he's not trying to define the landscape. He's not trying to determine what it is, what it isn't, where it stops, where it ends, where it starts, he's asking questions to get to know. And what were the two? There were 2 points that followed it up.
Yeah, he said, then hope for some reciprocity and perhaps even intimacy.
Yeah, I love that. That part for me clicked when I start thinking about trying to encounter God. Because I feel like if it was some sort of like simple formula, I think a lot of people have told me and kind of painted this picture that God is easy to find. That picture is painted in the light of God is easy to find if you know what you're looking for, if you've determined what God is, if you've determined what that relationship with him is already, then he's easy to look for. He's easy to find. But if you enter that relationship with questions, with hope for reciprocity, for something to come back.
That's right.
And that curious asking questions, trying to know more, not for the sake of obtaining knowledge, but for the sake of relationship, then the best thing that could happen is God responds. The ultimate best thing that happens is intimacy, which has already been extended by God. He's the original engager
Giver,
with
yeah.
a giver. Yeah, he's the original giver of relationship.
Right.
And it would make sense that to be an image bearer of that would mean to seek relationship in that way, by asking questions, by trying to learn, by trying to remain humble and curious, by trying to ask questions and not forcing anything about any relationship, but merely being open to that reciprocity if it's there, and intimacy at best with people, with creation, with God. It just, that like clicked for me. That's a way of understanding the reality of love, experiencing life in that posture of curiosity and question asking and seeking relationship with all. Does that make sense? I don't.
Yes. Yes. Well, what comes to mind is love is patient, love is kind, love is, the love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13, I believe. None of those things are determined by a single point of reference. Like, it's what you just said. All of those things are open-ended. Patient with whom? Under what circumstances? Kind, like no one gets to just be a self-proclaimed kind person. If you want to find out if you're kind, you got to ask somebody. Have I been kind to you?
Yeah.
And so there is this reciprocity. If God is the ultimate giver, what is this gift that we've been given? And then what does it mean for us to give back? And like anyone who's ever given a gift knows that you can give a pretty crappy gift if you don't do your research and like know what the other person is about. You know what I mean? So we're always getting out of that single point of reference. We're always getting out of ego. We're always invited to fully join God in generosity.
Yeah.
Hope for the best and find out what intimacy can be. But there's no guarantees with love. Jesus, could be argued he is the most loving human that has shown up here, and he was executed by the state, capital punishment. So maybe the project is more like the movie Holes, where you're just, it's just a lot of maybe there's a lot of hardship and being misunderstood along the way. Maybe the movie Holes makes the whole thing just totally confusing.
I was tracking until you brought that up.
Now I'm just thinking about my cowboy hat and whiskey again. That's okay. We'll cut it. And when I say we'll cut it, I mean we will not cut anything. There's very minimal editing here.
A
We
few
don't have time for
coughs.
that. Yeah. Dude, I think we need to wrap it up because we said a lot. We've got some rabbit holes to come back to. We've got other people we want to bring on at some point. It's in a good spot, man. I'm loving this.
Yeah, that went by so quick. I just looked
know,
at the
dude.
time. Crazy.
Hey, if you are listening, and if we haven't directly shouted you out as one of the few listeners that has responded to us, welcome. We're glad that you're in the conversation. You can always go to tabletalk.fm and ask a question, or follow us where you find podcasts, all that. Yeah, it's just we're honored to be here and just enjoying the ride. You want to sign us off, Sam?
Yeah. Thank y'all again for sticking it out with us. Until next time, the only thing that matters is faith expressing itself in love. Peace.